ever made a mistake that has caused you problems and the consequences left you feeling defeated? You were devastated, you feel there's no hope, and you feel that you have no future at all because God doesn't love you anymore? Well, I've been in that situation many times in my 74 years of life, and I have fallen flat on my face, and I did not feel like I could get up. I felt like I had hit rock bottom. And so the question is, if I can get up, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I reconnect with God? Well, you will find in the Bible that the Bible has plenty of stories where there are a lot of people who have hit rock bottom. They feel like they will never get up again, but God, in the down times, ministers to them and lifts them up and shows them His grace. Guess what? He will do the same for you. I'm going to take you to Luke 15, 11 through 24 today. It is the parable of the prodigal son. And we find a man that has two sons. One of his sons, the younger son, is a rebel. And I'm going to start reading in verse 12 of Luke 15. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. In verse 13, it says a few days later that the younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. Verses 17 and 18. When he finally came to his senses, he said, "I will go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and you.'" In verse 20, while he was still a long way off, that is the younger son, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. And in verse 24, he says this, "For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." His actions after he suffered his defeat, when he was at the bottom, shows us how to get up after hitting rock bottom. We learn about the 3 steps here that he took to make things right with his father. And if we take these 3 steps in our relationship with Jesus when we have fallen flat on our face, we will find that Jesus will restore us and will celebrate our return to Him. This well-known story captures the essence of the quote, where God doesn't meet you when you're feeling up. God ministers to you when you're down. And so we see that the prodigal son had everything on the way up. He had wealth, he had freedom, he had ambition, but then he fell. And on his way down, in his lowest moment, hungry, humiliated, and alone, that he came to his senses. He came to his senses, and he met the grace and love of the Father. In our lives, it's often in the depths, not the heights, that we encounter God most clearly, and we can see that He is good and that He will take care of us. 3 steps in the life of the prodigal son show us how to come back to God when we have hit rock bottom after becoming independent and blowing things up in our lives. Number 1, you need to acknowledge your brokenness. Before we meet God, we must admit our need for Him. In Psalm 51, verse 17, it says, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and repentant heart. O God, you will not despise." The prodigal son in verse 17 came to himself. He realized that his way in life wasn't working. He was living independently of God, and he fell flat on his face. And so instead of blaming others, he recognized his own failure. By the way, God doesn't meet you when you're feeling proud and pompous. He meets you when you're humble. So when we stop pretending and start confessing, God draws near to us. And so this lesson for us today is this. Instead of covering our wounds with pride or distraction, or even blaming others, confess them to God. Tell the Lord that you have done wrong. God can heal what you're willing to reveal. The second step he took was that he returned to the Father. Brokenness is the beginning, not the end. The next step is to return to God. There's a verse in Joel 2:13 that says, return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love. Now the son didn't just feel bad. He got up and he said, I will return to my Father. Now that is repentance, not just remorse, but movement. God doesn't require perfection. He just requires direction. When we turn around, he runs to us. He doesn't keep you waiting. He runs to you, and he's got his arms wide open. Now here's the lesson we learn from this. If we have wandered from God, if we've fallen flat on our face and we've repented, it's never too late to come home. God's arms are still open. So we need to take the first step, and you'll find that he's already running to meet you and extend a hand of grace and lift you up so that you can begin again. The last thing is this. When you come back to the Father and he extends his grace, then step 3 is to receive God's grace. God doesn't meet us with shame. He meets us with celebration. In Ephesians 2:8, it says, it is by grace that you've been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God. And so we find here that the Father didn't scold his son. He restored him. He gave him a robe, he gave him a ring, and he gave him a big celebration feast. Now that's grace. On the way down, you expect rejection, but with God, you receive redemption. That is, he takes you back. So don't disqualify yourself from God because of your failure. His grace is not earned, it's given. All you have to do is come back to him. So don't hesitate to receive it. If you have been feeling that you've hit rock bottom, you need to come back to the Lord so that you begin anew in life. Are you on your way up or are you on your way down? God is not waiting at the top of your pride and at the top of your ambitions. He's already near in the valley of your surrender. And the thing about God is that he knows your every step. And if you take rebellious steps away from him and you fall flat on your face, he is willing, he is there to pick you up. So don't be afraid of falling. Sometimes that's the only way, the only true way that you will find God and return to him. It's in the broken times, it's in the rock bottom times where God, and everything seems like darkness, that the grace of God comes shining through like the brilliant sun sending its sunlight to you in a dark place. And God is there and he wants to pick you up. I have loved this because, again, there are times when I have failed the Lord and I have fallen on my face and I've hit rock bottom. But God has come through. God's lifted me up and a new day has dawned in my life and he has begun to walk with me again, leading me to victory. And I may fall again, but God is going to be there. He doesn't agree when I walk away from him full of pride. But he knows that if I fail, he will be there to avail himself of avail himself of his grace to us. And the closing verse I want to leave with you today is from 1 Peter 5:6, and it says this: "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." So, you meet God when you stop climbing and you start surrendering to him. I hope this has been a good lesson for you this week. And if you have hit rock bottom, or at least you feel like you've hit rock bottom, realize that's not the end. God will lift you up, and God will carry you forth to victory. We'll see you next week. May God bless you as you walk with him.